So I've been reading this book, and I'm pretty sure it's called Putting is Not a Game of Perfect. And people listening to this will know that I'm a golfer, and yes, bear with me before you switch off.
Before you'll start yawning.
I've been reading this book, and it's by a guy called Dr. Bob Rotella, who's a brilliant sports psychologist, and he started in the field of baseball and then transferred those skills into golf. And what he was talking about, he told this fantastic story about Jack Nicklaus, who's arguably one of the greatest golfers of all time, who was on stage doing a talk, and he said something like, "I have never missed a putt from 3 foot away, inside 3 foot, and I've never missed a putt in the last round of a championship."
Okay.
And then he asked for questions, and someone puts their hands up and says, "I loved your talk, it was brilliant. But 3 months ago, you missed a putt in the last round of a championship. So what you told us was slightly false." And Jack Nicklaus just looked at him and said, "I have never missed a putt from inside 3 foot, and I have never missed a putt in the last round of a championship." And this guy challenged him again, and he said exactly the same thing. And the thing that I kind of took from it, and what Dr. Bob Rotella talked about, is that selective memory can be a really powerful, useful thing. He did miss that putt, but in his mind, he did not miss that putt. He has taken it out of his memory banks, if you like, because we are brilliant at reinforcing the things that we do wrong. We're brilliant at, we're psychologically made up to focus on the negatives. And what he's trained himself to do is to discard the misses and only have pictures of the ones that he makes in his head.
It's interesting because I didn't actually take it that way when you said that. I actually thought that what you were going to say was he might not have got it in the hole, but he didn't miss hitting it. So he hasn't missed in the sense that he's made an attempt, not necessarily got it in the hole.
Yeah.
But that's winning in the sense of he's actually attempted it. Because I think sometimes the biggest issue that I see a lot of people is they're too frightened to even try. And you've said before, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. And you're right, and I can see how you would take it like that. And I've paraphrased what was half
I
the chapter in the book. You haven't read the book, but I thought it was fascinating because you and I have had conversations with people all the time about why they won't try stuff, as you've just alluded to. And often it's because they've got an experience where they've failed, where they've missed. And that's what they remember.
Yeah.
They've picked up the phone to have a call with somebody, or they've had a sales conversation that's been pre-arranged, and there's been an outcome that wasn't a win. And that's what gets stored. So when they go have that same situation again, what do they remember? They remember the negative outcome. And what Jack Nicklaus was able to do, and I think some of the best players in any sport are able to do, is selectively discard those memories. And because he works so hard, and Bob Rotella talks about meditating at night, doing things like picturing yourself making 3 foot putts over and over and over and over again every night before you go to bed, and it becomes a part of your makeup. It's fundamental visualization. It's why we have vision boards and all that sort of stuff. So your brain starts to believe, and then believes, that all you ever do is make the putt. So instead of focusing on, well, the last time I made sales calls, I had, I was told to sod off, insert expletive, or we could have a bleep there, couldn't we? 8 times from 10 calls. Well, just replay the 2 yeses. Yeah. Replay the 2 good conversations that you had. And then your brain won't remember the 8.
It's reinforcement as well, isn't it? I know you're not a TikTok fan, but I am. And,
we were talking about it.
We were just talking about that. And one of the things that I've seen on TikTok, which I wish that I'd done with my kids and I didn't, because I didn't have TikTok at the time and I didn't know about this stuff, is but I've seen people do it where they've got their quite young children, maybe even as young as 2, and they almost give them a mantra: I am strong, I am great, I am bold, those kind of I am statements, and they have their kid repeat it. and they put some energy into it. And that kid grows up believing that that's what they are, because someone they trusted has told them that, but also they've said it from such a young age that it becomes part of their makeup. So then when they get into an environment where there is a potential for failure, their belief is that they can do it, that they can succeed. Do you think that makes them more susceptible to failure in the sense of when something doesn't go right, that it's a shock to them? Or do you think that there's a resilience there from reinforcing that positive so many times that when they do come across failure, that they don't get knocked down by failure?
I think if you build a picture that is overwhelmingly one of success, then when you do get failures, it's easier to overwrite those failures with success.
Okay.
So it's a little bit like, when you write some copy, the first draft is never the draft that you end up putting on your website or sending out to somebody. But you don't keep, Kay does because of the job that she does, but you don't keep all the iterations. All you ever present to the web developer, for instance, or that you send out as an email, is the final version. And the final version has got all the spelling errors taken care of. It's had all the grammar tweaked. You've taken out the sentences that didn't quite make sense. You've shortened the longer sentences so that they're more effective. You've taken out all the that's, for example. But there aren't you don't keep the sort of 5 or 6 iterations that you had beforehand.
No.
You keep the final version.
Yeah, but I would say most people are more comfortable with that type of failure, if you want to call it that, because it's private. So the end customer only sees the final perfect version. They don't see the failures, whereas something like a sales call or sport where you're doing it in front of an audience, people see the failure as much as they see the success.
Yeah.
So does that make it harder in those environments then to cope with failure?
I think, and I'm just referring back to this, to Dr. Bob Rotella and what I took from it. Because there's 2 schools of thought, isn't there? There's failure and how can we learn from it, fundamentally. But what he's talking about is reinforcing your belief in success by rubbing out the mistakes that you have. And he believes that the human brain is capable of doing that by reinforcing the positives that you've had. So I'll use tennis as an example, the simplest one you can do. There is an urban myth in tennis that if you double fault on the first point, you will lose the match.
Okay.
It's just absolute rubbish. And people have gone through thousands of hours of stats and data to try and prove it. It's just an urban myth. It's rubbish. But tennis players believe it.
Yeah. Because
that's what they're told. And therefore you go out and you hit a double fault, you might as well not play the rest of the match because you've told
given
yourself
up.
You've given up.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I think that's what you're talking about, that we start to believe what everybody else tells us. We start to and everybody else includes us. And I think by and large we are a product of what we think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So change what you think.
Yeah.
And you'll become a different person.
Yeah.
So I spent last night, before I went to sleep, practicing making 3-foot putts. Just because being a better golfer is important to me. And I know for a fact that I can lie awake at night bemoaning and replaying the ones that I missed. In the same way that I can wake up in the middle of the night screaming about the 3-wood that I hit out of bounds on the 4th.
You need more of a life.
I need more of a life, maybe. But it's a very obvious message, but what I hadn't realised is that you can actually retrain your brain by that positive reinforcement often enough that there's no question in my mind that Jack Nicklaus just has absolutely zero recollection of that missed putt. It's not that he's telling himself and kind of brazening it out. he does not remember. If we were able to go into his brain and pull out his memory files, he has erased that one.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a relatively famous experiment where a teacher gets 2 plants, puts them in glass jars, and gets the kids in the class. One plant gets nice things said to them, and one plant gets horrible things. Abused basically. And all other environmental factors are the same. So they get the same water, the same heat, the same light, blah blah blah. And they're in glass jars, so they can't, there's nobody's touching them and destroying the root system or whatever. And at the end of a month, the plant that's been abused is dying, basically. It's black, it's wilted, it's unhappy. And the plant that's been said nice things to is thriving. And I don't know how the science works in that. It's a bit woo-woo,
no idea.
But it's a scientifically proven experiment. It's been repeated, same results. That our beings, whether that's a plant or an animal or a human being, take on what is said to them. And it's so important what you tell yourself. So if you're telling yourself, I'm a failure, you say it quite a lot, actually, and we've talked about this before. I'm not going to say the word because it's a little bit rude, but you berate yourself when you get something wrong, however simple it is. Like you could have forgotten that you put the cheese in the fridge, and you'll tell yourself off.
I know exactly what
openly. I'm sure people who know what phrase it is as well, but for those who don't, I'm not going to spoil the illusion. But it's just it's not even a mistake. It's just part of being human, isn't it? But you tell yourself off about that, and I do the same. We all do it. But what's the message that we're giving ourselves? That we're stupid, that we're an idiot, that we're not good enough, that that you somehow failed because you put the cheese in the fridge and you forgot where you put it, or you thought you got it out and you didn't get it out because your brain had a little moment and it forgot. I think that message that we tell ourselves is really important.
It is, and I think there's an extension to this that I said by and large we are a product of what we think we are. But I also believe that by and large we are a product of our attitudes towards situations as well. There are very, very few things in this life that happen to us. They just happen.
Yeah. And
I know there will be lots of people who might argue that, differently. And I agree. If you have a medical condition, for example, it's very easy to believe that it's happened to you. I would argue. I'm not saying I'm right, but I would argue that has happened. You happen to be in the way. And what we can control, though, is our attitude towards it.
Yeah.
What we can control is the way we respond, and how we respond, and whether we take responsibility for what happens next. Because things happen to us every day, all the time.
Of course they do.
I'll rephrase that. Things happen all day, all the time. We have a choice as to whether it's happened to us or we happen to be in the way.
Yeah.
And we have a choice, even more importantly, on how we respond to it. And bringing this full circle to where we started, if you're making cold calls, if you've sent out sales letters that haven't worked, if you've run a TikTok campaign that's not got you any returns, whatever it is, okay, you can berate yourself, you can be angry, you can blame other people, or you can go, how do I take responsibility for what happens next? And perhaps part of that is about focusing on what did go well as part of those campaigns, those calls, etc., and making that the focal part of your attention and what you endeavour to remember, so that you're not creating a negative thought loop that's the backbone for the next time you try.
Yeah, and I think it's you can have a failure and gain something positive out of it, in the sense of it's how you take that on board. So, for example, your example of failing a sales call and getting a no, but you can still get something positive out of that, in terms of, well, what did I learn? What did I learn from that? Do I need to tweak the way that I've presented it? Did I talk too much, too little? Did I start off, too hard? And all of those are positive things, even though they feel like negative at the time, because if you take that and change it, you can be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've got to have the right attitude to look for the positive in seemingly negative situations.
Yeah, and I think that's what it all boils down to. Jack Nicklaus has an attitude that he chooses not to remember what he misses. He chooses to eradicate his failures in his mind. We all know that he didn't win every tournament that he played. But as far as he's concerned, to build his confidence bank, he is choosing, and I suspect whether he meditates or however he does it, or whether it's just the way he's made up, he just chooses to forget. And he chooses to forget often enough. As I said earlier, I suspect if you could go in and dig out his memory files, they wouldn't exist.
But I think you can choose to change how you perceive that. I don't think it's an inbuilt. Even if you've been brought up seeing the negative in everything, and you've had family life where it's all what I call woe is me people. I think you can change. You can make an active choice to say, I'm not going to pick the negative out of this. I'm going to pick the positive out of this. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it, and the more natural it becomes until you just...
Yeah.
I'm not saying everybody does it all the time, because I don't know that everybody is positive all the time, but I think you can make a choice to be positive.
Do you know, I was in a meeting within the last several days, and with a business, one of my clients, just ran a team training day on sales. And one of the guys got quite het up, and he turned around and he said, I'm 36 years old, I'm not going to change, this is who I am. And he's surrounded by other people, a few of them are younger, many of them are older, who are just having conversations, making notes, and looking at how the information that was being presented to them could be applied to make a change. So who's going to be a more effective salesperson stroke human being? The one who says, I can't change, keeps telling himself that, and therefore believes it, or the ones that go, I'm 50, this is interesting, how do I apply it?
Yeah. I think it's such a shame that somebody says at 36 is so young, I'm not going to change. What, for the next 60 years, probably? Yeah. You're just going to carry on. You've only lived 1/3 of your life, but that's it. You've given up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who knows? Anyway,
don't give up. Be positive.
Be positive, and delete the mistakes, however that tries. And I think it's less about deleting the mistakes, as he just chooses to remember all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And that.
Focus on the positives.
And you can do that. We can all do that.
Yeah.
We can all choose to focus on the good stuff. Cool. As always, we're going to have a play with this recording function.
Yeah.
On what do we use? Anchor. And Spotify, that people can leave voice messages.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
That's a new
thing.
thing.
I didn't know that.
It might not be a new thing. It shows how much I care about detail. So if anybody'd love to, leave us a voice message. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on attitude towards failure and success, and whether you think you can choose to remember the successes rather than the failures and retrain your brain.
Have you done it?
And have you done it? That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear that.
Cool.